everybody. I'm Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet, about to be joined by Ken Weave from the Winnipeg Free Press. Together, we are Kenny and Renny, and this is the Kenny and Renny postgame show after what I thought I was going to have to break down an old school Winnipeg Jets game. And you'll know what I mean about this. Not quite Snake Charmer, but Snake Charmer era. And what I mean by that is, I will say this. I've been covering the team since 2014. And I would suggest starting around not 2018, but 2019 and afterward, I think the Winnipeg Jets have beat the deserve to win o-meter at a rate that is probably close to leading the league if you add it up after all those years. The Winnipeg Jets, you know how I felt about them for a lot of those years. Kind of not giving their best in games. And listen, you know how you beat the deserve to win a meter? You draft and you develop Connor Hellebuyck. That's how you do it, right? And so this is one of these things. Now let's make one thing abundantly clear. The Winnipeg Jets do not win this game if it isn't for Connor Hellebuyck. I don't care that it ended up being 4-1. It'll be one of those games you look back on, you think, oh yeah, the Jets beat the Wild 4-1. They kind of smoked them in that game. Anyone who's watching that game knows that didn't happen, except for at least one person in the chat room who's going to be getting an invite to my hot tub later on here. I've already marked it. But this now, while this is a game, I take a look at this and I think if if Connor Hellebuyck doesn't bail out the Jets for the vast majority of the first 40 minutes of this game, this is a game that's out of reach. It's similar to what we were talking about, like the Winnipeg Jets lose the last game to the Nashville Predators, but that could have been one of those games that like turn off the TV after the second period because they're not coming back in this one. It could have been that kind of game here tonight. That's where we were headed, except Connor Hellebuyck was beyond magnificent. I mean, this is just like, I had a message from a good friend of mine, used to work as a producer for Hockey Night in Canada. He's a Winnipeg Jets fan now. And he said it like, just sit back for a second and realize that you are watching one of the true all-time great goaltenders in action. Like, you'll look back at this time at some point and say like, wow, we really saw one of the best. We saw a guy who just may end up being on the NHL's Mount Rushmore of goaltenders, the way that he's going here. This is one of those performances tonight, and I've said this before. I'll get this out of the way quick, but Connor Hellebuyck, what amazes me about him is not only is he this guy, this is another one of these games that the Jets win when they surrender more than 40 shots, when they're getting absolutely pumped. Connor Hellebuyck's record when the team allows more than 40 shots is just ridiculous. I don't have the stat, but it is stupid how often the Winnipeg Jets win when they get caved in the fashion that they did for a large chunk of this game. But the fact that when the Winnipeg Jets are defensive stalwarts, which they have been for the vast majority of games this year, he knows how to play that as well. So give Connor Hellebuyck his flowers. We'll talk about him more in the show. I wrote it in the heading. He goes into God mode, demi-god mode for Alex Iafallo. I've got a lot to say about him later on in the show, but what a game that he has here. The Winnipeg Jets win for three reasons in this game, and they don't win if you take away any of these three reasons. Connor Hellebuyck, they win. They win because of Alex Iafallo on this night, and they win because of the second goal they score and the way that the Minnesota Wild handle this. Now, listen, I think that this is a night. The deserve to win a meter, in my mind, is squarely in the field of the Minnesota Wild. It's not to say that the Winnipeg Jets, I really like their third period. I'm going to get to all of this kind of things because that's, to me, just quickly, and then we'll jump back to it later, but that's, to me, what sets this Winnipeg Jets team apart from the Winnipeg Jets teams of the past that got caved in and win games. They didn't just kind of fluke out their skill in this one. They worked their way into it, and with the lead, they played the third period exactly how you want a team to play the third period with the lead. So give them the credit for that. But I'm telling you right now, the Winnipeg Jets do not win this game if they do not get that second goal. and they do not get that second goal. And this is what I'm just going to say this as a blanket statement. The Winnipeg Jets are better than the Minnesota Wild, regardless of how many shots the Minnesota Wild got, regardless of how much they carried the play. The Winnipeg Jets are better than the Minnesota Wild, because could you think for a second of the Winnipeg Jets doing in that situation what the Minnesota Wild did? Could you imagine the Winnipeg Jets just abandoning their responsibilities defensively the way that two of those players did for the Minnesota Wild, getting into it with Alex Iafallo the way they did? And the fact that it starts out and there's four of them, and Neil Pionk heads up ice, and not only does a guy look and say, oh geez, I lost my man, like Neil Pionk takes off to join the play, and those two guys don't seem to care that they're outmanned down the other end of the ice. Neil Pionk is key to that goal, and he wouldn't have been key if his man just would have followed him down the ice and taken him away as an option. Can you imagine the Winnipeg Jets putting some kind of petty, is what I'm going to call it, small, absolutely nothing little game within the game, and putting it ahead of the rest of their teammates, of the game itself? Like, the Minnesota Wild gave that game away on complete and utter pettiness. And I've talked time and again about the details. This is another one of those details. The Winnipeg Jets would never do what the Minnesota Wild did there. That was an example, and we'll get deeper into this. Connor Hellebuyck was frustrating this team. They got frustrated and they cracked. That's what it looks like when a team cracks. That's what a team looks like when they go completely and utterly brain dead. And that play is about the most brain dead play I have seen a team make in the NHL this season. They handed the game to the Winnipeg Jets. From that point on, I saw someone talk about how the Winnipeg Jets flipped the script and started playing. Yeah, they flipped the script because they finally got to play in a defensive shell. They didn't have to worry about getting up ice and scoring goals. They got to fall into a defensive shell against a team that was already frustrated, and they never got back into it after that. The Winnipeg Jets win this game because they aren't the kind of team to shoot themselves in the foot. I can't think I'm trying to think of an occasion this season when the Winnipeg Jets have shot themselves in the foot, when they've died in a game because of self-inflicted wounds. That's what you saw from the Minnesota Wild here tonight. Teams that shoot themselves in the foot aren't as mentally strong as teams that don't, and it is why the Winnipeg Jets, time and time again in the recent history against the Minnesota Wild, always come out on top no matter what. Like earlier in the season when they were down, I take a look when Mark Scheifele scores that goal with a couple seconds left on the clock, why that team isn't stacking the front of the net to make sure that a shot doesn't get through, I don't know. But the Winnipeg Jets at the most crucial moments are focused, and they are doing the right things. And the Minnesota Wild at the most crucial moments or create crucial moments that go against them by doing stuff like that. Winnipeg is far more focused than that. That's why they're the better team. That's why they win this game here tonight. That's my take on the whole thing. Time to bring in the man with the best music in the business for his take on the whole thing. Here comes Kenny, folks. Kenny Bardo nails it here, saying I'd be ticked off too if my team got 45 shots and only got one. We'll get into this, the mental warfare that existed tonight by Connor Hellebuyck. Scardy doesn't seem to be picking up what I'm putting down. He says, they did score 4 goals, so some resilience there. I don't know if he showed up late and entirely missed the comments I said about the third period, but we'll get into that. What we won't get into is a nice, comfy Vittorio Rossi suit, because you and I are looking as casual as it gets. Kenny looks like, Kenny, the wrestler, the wake-up wrestler. I look like I'm trying to pull off the John Cena look. Either way, we don't look like Vittorio Rossi men can, but I will fix that coming up soon, although not on a Winnipeg Jets broadcast. I've been commandeered by the Montreal Canadiens on Wednesday and the Ottawa Senators on Saturday. But that does not mean we will be missing this show. I'll probably have the suit on for Wednesday because I'll have done the game. And I'll be looking like a Vittorio Rossi man, as we should do more often, Ken. And there's one way to do that. Head on down to Vittorio Rossi on Corden Avenue. Walk in, loudly proclaim Kenny and Renny sent you. Ask for Frankie and the boys, and they will do you up right. Ken, what did you see in that game?
Yeah, you're not going to be wearing the suit because we're only going to be doing the show at about 1 or 2 Eastern. I don't like your chances.
Once I get in the suit, it's hard to get out. It's like a feeling of bliss, Ken.
It's a beautiful suit.
You know that is Victoria Ross.
Yeah, you even have time to get a nap in, but before we start the show. But anyway, no. In terms of the game, sleepy, sluggish kind of first period for the Jets, no doubt about that. Scott O'Neill did make a bit of a joke about it afterward. He didn't really think that it was as dangerous as the 22 shots against suggested. He thought that the man or woman keeping the shot clock may have fallen asleep on the clock and added a few extra nuggets there. But either way, the Jets, I thought they were slow in the first period. I thought that the Wild made them look a little bit slow with their diligent forecheck and things of that nature. But I do agree that in the second period things started to change. It was kind of the opposite of what we saw in Nashville, where even though the Jets got it to tie it after 2, their second period was probably even worse than their first in Nashville. So high dangers, according to Natural Stat Trick, at 5-on-5 in the first period were 5-3 Wild. So it wasn't as lopsided as the 22. What was it? 22-7 as the clock board showed. Again, resilience is a good word. I thought that the Jets did show some resilience in getting things turned around during the second period, but for me, it was a boa constrictor third, Sean. That was the thing that really will stand out about this game, in a game where the Jets could have gone away and thought, oh, well, maybe it's just not their day. They took it to the Wild in the third, Sean. 8.5 minutes without a shot on net, right? After the shot clock had been pinging like it was going out of style for the first 2 periods. So back to structure, then some timeliness. But yeah, you're right. I mean, the Jets found a way to get themselves back into a game where, Connor Hellebuyck was the reason they were in the game to begin with. But again, our pal Kelly Rudy has said it. Teams don't need to apologize for the goaltender doing his job. And today, Connor Hellebuyck did his job better than most goalies do ever. And that's not a knock on Gustafsson. Philip Gustafsson was pretty good too, Sean. I mean, he was a guy who came in with very almost identical numbers to Connor Hellebuyck, who we've been, he's clearly the front runner to win a third Vezina. But Gustafsson's rejuvenation has been a humongous story for the Minnesota Wild, and one of the big reasons that they're nipping at the Jets' heels. But as we talked about on Saturday, Sean, the perennial 4-pointer here. This means that the Jets are now 6 points up on the Wild, even though the Wild do have a game in hand. I mean, that's a whole lot different than being 2 up and the other team has a game in hand. So lots to like about the Jets game. Certainly plenty of areas to improve. Some things that didn't go their way necessarily, but this is one of the games where Connor Hellebuyck did his job exceptionally well. This was I'll put this down as the second game this season where Connor Hellebuyck had to go out and steal the game. Now, again, that's to take nothing away from the Jets' ability to get the tables turned in the third. But this game's out of reach unless it's for Connor Hellebuyck being an outstanding with 38 saves through 2 periods. I mean that's what he's
9. Yeah.
He had 1 allowed though. It was 39 shots after 2.
Sure.
So
yeah,
38 saves. But anyways, again, lots of things. We're going to dig into the defense pretty soon here. But overall, again, it will sound a little bit silly for a team that's 18-4. But Sean, for a team that had lost 3 of its last 4 games, this was an important victory for the Jets, right? It gets them in a 3-game season series because they only play 3 times instead of the usual 4 in the Central this year. The Jets are now 2-0 against a team that, they quite easily could be facing in the playoffs at some point. So going to 2-0, yes, the Wild did a nice job. They got it to overtime the first game, so they do have a point in the series, but the Jets have won the season series now. So that's an important thing. especially for a team that's chasing you if you're the Jets. So, that's important for them. Now they're 7-1 in the Central Division this year, right? Their only loss coming on Saturday to the Nashville Predators. But overall, again, lots of things to clean up. But Sean, I really liked the play of the third and the fourth line. And I mean, you talked about Iafallo. We're gonna spend a juicier segment digging into his play, and probably fairly timely now that the Jets are rolling into Los Angeles on a day where Kupari has his first assist since October of 2023, and Alex Iafallo has 2 goals and plays a massive role in a third goal where he's not on the score sheet, but he's certainly involved in the play. It'll be a timely time for the Jets to kind of roll into Los Angeles. I'm pretty sure not wanting to give too much away, but I'm guessing my colleague Mike McIntyre is going to be digging into the old peel back a few layers on the trade that brought all of Gabe Vilardi, Alex Iafallo, and Rasmus Kupari, plus that draft pick to the Winnipeg Jets here in the coming days in the Winnipeg Free Press here.
Okay, I want to get this out of the way because Christopher Sitar says, tremendous game, absolutely dismantled the Wild. Dismantled, says with an exclamation point. This is hopeful at best and the kind of take at worst that deserves an invite to my hot tub. I don't think you can say that a team that had 40 goals and required an all-time performance by an all-time goaltender to survive it, a dismantling of the Minnesota Wild. So Christopher Sitar, you get an invite to my backyard Arctic Spas hot tub, because there's no such thing as a cold take in an Arctic Spas hot tub, especially the one with the Spa Boy package like mine has. And if you want the kind of hot tub that does everything just shy of being Kenny's hot tub time machine, you know what to do. Head on over to Arctic Spas, talk to our boy Dustin there. He's the guy who can set you up with the kind of hot tub that can melt even the coldest of takes on the coldest of nights. Like this is a cold night here. I want to get right into Alex Iafallo.
Sure.
I think from the very beginning, I have shown that I'm very, very bullish on Alex Iafallo. I do think that at the end of this season, Alex Iafallo is gone, because I think Alex Iafallo is wasted to a degree on a fourth line, the way that he's played for the Winnipeg Jets. And I would feel like I was being wasted if I were Alex Iafallo playing on a fourth line. That said, there's a Nemesnikov angle to him where he doesn't, if he does feel that way, Ken, I think he should feel that way. If he does feel that way, like it would be earned, but he sure doesn't show it. He doesn't ever complain. He goes out, plays his role, does his thing. I think Alex Iafallo is a third to second line player on the vast majority of teams in the NHL, which is something that, everyone wants to play up the lineup if they can, but it is an expression of just how ridiculously deep this Winnipeg Jets team is, that you would have a fourth liner who actually plays on your second power play, but is also of the quality and capability scoring wise that Alex Iafallo is. Now, the one thing that makes him great is he can be a fourth line player and play that fourth line role on a night where, you're not going to get a sniff of offense from the fourth line. He can play that role where he just absolutely shuts you down. I mean, Ken, one of my favorite plays of his from this game is when the score is 3-1 and the Minnesota Wild are pressing. Not only after he scores a goal and redirects the puck in for his second of the game, but there's a shot from the point where the Minnesota Wild have a whole bunch of people in the front of the net and they fire it, and Alex Iafallo calmly knocks it out of the air, straight down, controls it, and then exits the zone afterwards. I mean, this guy is sitting there winning you the game offensively, winning you the game mind battle wise, as he's the guy who's in the middle of that amazingly boneheaded play by the Minnesota Wild players. But whatever he did, he got under their skin enough to take 2 guys out of the play and create the goal. I mean, he creates 3 goals on this night. He doesn't get a point on the second one, but he creates them. I just get around to this, and what I'm saying is you've got a guy who doesn't have the kind of ego that would hurt you by putting him on the fourth line. He can play as a fourth liner, but he can also play the kind of role where when the games get the hardest, and this was a hard game to score. The first goal that he gets is like there are fractions of seconds for him to get the shot off. And you talked about the Wild's goaltender, how good he's playing. He has no idea where this shot is going because Alex Iafallo is just firing it on net. And he says one of those things, Ken, where he's like, I'm just trying to get the shot on net. You know this as a hockey player, Ken. Good hockey players just have an innate sense of where it is, where the net is, where the posts are. So regardless of whether he's just shooting it on net, he's a good enough offensive player that wherever he's shooting it, he's tucking it on the side of the post. And the goalie doesn't have a shot of knowing where it's going because of the backup. I want to make one comment that we can maybe launch from somewhere or do later in the show. But Ken, you and I were talking a little bit about Cole Perfetti. Now, he does get a point on this night on the power play. But Cole Perfetti, and hey, we can say this. He got an empty netter a couple of games ago. So Cole Perfetti now has 2 points in his last 3 games. So maybe I'm heading in the wrong direction here. But a lot of that game I didn't like for Cole Perfetti. I thought it was a little bit he was a little bit invisible. And the one thought that I keep having over and over again about an Alex Iafallo, who I think is better than the role that the Jets have him play. I'm surprised at this stage that the Winnipeg Jets have not explored the idea of moving Alex Iafallo into Cole Perfetti's spot. And if Cole Perfetti can't play the fourth line role, them moving David Gustafsson in and making the fourth line just basically that full-on grinding fourth line. But I'll say this, if there's a guy who would deserve an opportunity on that second line by being a good soldier, by not complaining about his situation, quite honestly, being the kind of guy who I think could take that second line to a next level, it's Alex Iafallo.
Yeah, I mean, Alex Iafallo, 99th and 100th NHL goals today. I mean, we know he's been used mostly in a checking role, but again, let's not forget, I mean, last year when Gabe Vilardi was out, Alex Iafallo got the first twist and turn on the top line. So, that kind of reinforces what you said about the Jets' depth. Iafallo is not a fourth liner on most NHL teams, I would imagine. I think that's pretty fair to say. He wasn't a fourth liner with the Kings. He was a very noticeable player in those series against the Edmonton Oilers that we watched closely. But yeah, I mean, could he move up? The thing with Iafallo is this: he's the modern day Matthew Perreault for the Jets. You know that he can play in the middle six if you need him to. You know that he can fill in on the top line if you need him to. If he's on the fourth line, he's an excellent player, almost a guarantee to be a double-digit goal scorer each and every year. Flirted with 20 a few times. Do I think he could move up in that spot? Yes. But what I would also say is that, I mean, the Jets need Cole Perfetti to be an impact player in order for them to get where they want to get to, I think. So,
hold on a second, though. Why?
Oh, I mean, they're invested in him to become one. Sorry, right now he's a complimentary player.
Sure, but I guess
I would just say this. I mean, I wouldn't bail on him in the first middle quarter of the year. But I mean, if you're the coaching staff, you have to know that Iafallo is a guy that you can put in there and see what happens. But I do think again, I'm not going to hide from this. I haven't liked a lot of the last 10 games from Cole Perfetti. No doubt about that. I did like the patience on his assist. It was a very smart play. Backhand pass, drew the defender to him. Pionk gets the shot. Iafallo goes to the dirty area, gets the goal. But I need to see more from Cole at 5-on-5. Right now, Alex Iafallo was a more noticeable player today. There's no arguing that. And again, it's just the way that he plays. He gets his nose a little bit dirtier. Cole was on with Paul Edmonds in the pregame show on CJOB today. I listened to the interview. He thinks it's more a matter of their lines not converting. For me, I think the line needs to generate more. But I would give them a little bit more runway, before considering anything else. But again, I also need to see more from Perfetti. I don't think that he is operating at the level that the Jets need him to be at in order for him to have a role. Again, let's just call it a middle six role because of the role that the Lowry line plays. So, but at the same time, I mean, I follow here, there, everywhere. He was omnipresent today, Sean, and like you said, his most impactful play may have actually been on the goal he gets no points on. And it's interesting. I didn't really notice it at the time, but Alex Iafallo telling Mike McIntyre after the game the reason why he got involved in the initial scrum on the play where he ends up with two wild players, that one of them who abandons his man, as you aptly pointed out, was because actually the wild player was poking Hellebuyck after the Jake Middleton chance. So not only is it undisciplined, it's unnecessary, right? I mean, that's the whole point of this line. And again, Sean, we know this. Joel Eriksson Ek is a pest, right? He's a pest. So he doesn't need Yakov Trenin getting involved for him. He likes to mix it up. And it's not like Alex Iafallo is this big bully that Trenin has to come to the aid of his, guy on the ice. They're not line mates, but a guy he's on the ice with. So I just think it was a very strange, and I think, Sean, more to your point, that to me is more of a, wire short circuiting that happens when you're staring down a goaltender and he's made, 35 saves through Anthony LaPanta, the play-by-play guy of the Wild for the TV side, pointed this out on Twitter after the game. He sensed that the frustration started to kick in for the Wild, early in that second period. So anyways, it's an interesting development, and I follow huge marks for what he's been. Oh, excuse me. Couldn't hit the mute button soon enough. Sorry about that, folks. Iafallo's been really good for the Jets. He can play anywhere in the lineup you need him. He's on the second power play. He's on the penalty kill. He's on the ice late, protecting leads. He's a bit of a human eraser when it comes to his defensive zone play. He's a ferocious forechecker, and he plays above his stead. He plays bigger than he is, right? That's the beauty of Alex Iafallo. He's not a big guy, but he's not afraid to mix it up. And him mixing it up sort of drew the attention of two Wild players. And again, let's also not forget the Jets kind of catch a bit of a break there, because on occasion that can be called a coincidental minor, right? Instead, the Jets are on the rush. They get a goal from Niederreiter, and it's to their benefit. I'm not saying the referees missed a call there, but it wouldn't have been surprising for them to have blown the whistle before that. But I think they let the play.
I think they saw what was happening, and they were like,
yeah.
if you're going to be like, if you really think we're going to bail you out of it, because put it this way, how mad would the Jets be if in that situation when basically the Wild are absconding their responsibilities, right? How mad would you be if you were Scott Arniel and the refs would have called a penalty in that play there? Like rightfully so, the refs didn't call anything in that situation. They shouldn't be calling anything in that situation. And why two guys felt the need to stick around there, that didn't make sense. I honestly can't think of another play like that, Ken. I was literally dumbfounded when because so at first you see the play and you're thinking, wow, what it kind of reminds me of, Ken? Remember that game against the Carolina Hurricanes? And I think it was Dylan DeMello throws a hit on someone and it draws a crowd. Everyone's expecting the refs to call the whistle, and they don't. And the Jets, and I think it's Nino Niederreiter and Ehlers, I think, head down the other way on like a 2-on-1 and score. Right. And everyone's kind of complaining, well, why didn't you blow the whistle? And the refs are like, well, why did you stop playing hockey? Right? Like, so maybe that's as similar as I've seen it before, but there's probably something to be said. And you know what, Ken, it does go to exactly what you're talking about. We talked about this. I used to talk about the psychological assassin that Pierre-Luc Dubois was when he was absolutely on top of his game. This was Connor Hellebuyck breaking the Minnesota Wild. And the crazy part about this is it's all like the one thing I've said before, and I do sense from the chat room that some people think I should be like more bullish on this game here tonight. Listen, there's one question that I always ask myself: is that a repeatable game? Can you go out and play that game 7 times in a playoff series and expect to win? I don't think you can. You can't be allowing 40 shots in the first 40 minutes of a game and think that you are going to win more times than not, right? So that's why I feel that way. But I'll say this, the Winnipeg Jets would handle that success more. We've talked about it on this show time and time again. The Winnipeg Jets just stick with their game. They don't get frustrated. They don't worry about the fact that they can't get more than one goal. They just do the right things over and over and over again until they win the game. The Minnesota Wild did the right things over and over and over and over again until they started, like, Connor Hellebuyck makes them question whether their game, which is working, They turn and they say, geez, we're getting 39 shots. This isn't working. We need to do something else. And I think that translates to the third period, Ken. All of a sudden, there's a bunch of hope plays.
Yep.
All of a sudden, the Wild are throwing passes, cross ice, no look passes, and they're getting turned over. Like, you want to know why the Winnipeg Jets didn't allow all those shots for so long. A, the Jets have gone into a defensive shell, and they're really, really good at it. But B, the Wild stop protecting the puck, and they start throwing hope plays out there, and they start just kind of doing all the wrong things. This is Connor Hellebuyck getting so buried into the brains of the Minnesota Wild that it's that worm that got into RFK's brain and ate a big chunk of it. That's whatever that parasite was. That's what Connor Hellebuyck was on this night, because he got into the brains of the Minnesota Wild. And like, hey, it's one thing to be a goaltender who just kind of stands on your head. It's another to be the kind of goaltender that makes a team feel hopeless. Connor Hellebuyck stole the hope from the Minnesota Wild, a team that has, for the most part this season, played the right way over and over again. He broke that team tonight, and I just think I'm fascinated by that performance.
Yeah, and we're giving them the pristine roofing wake-up call to Trenin and Eriksson Ek for sort of the beginning of the end for the Wild there, Sean. That's what I'm going with anyway. And Connor Hellebuyck is definitely responsible for that.
For sure. Hey, he forced them to sleep, and now they need the pristine roofing wake-up call to wake up after that, and that means it's time to give North End Rick the pristine roofing wake-up call at 204-981-6289. He's the guy you want down at your place for all your roofing, siding, and exterior needs. And you can also call Pristine Roofing directly at 204-237-7663. And Ken, while you're at it, why don't you give Sweet Lou a shout out?
Yeah, right on. For folks who have realty needs they'd like to have met, buying, selling, curious what that house on the corner is going for, contact our main man, Lou Ferlin at Royal LePage Dynamic Realty, 204-791-9971, or at the office, 204-989-5000. His email is lou@louferlin.ca. That's LOU@LOUFURLAN.ca. Lou Ferlin, excellent realtor, excellent human being, and excellent supporter of the community, including this podcast.
All right, I would like to have like some, blaring music or some kind of like really fun kind of animation or something like that. But you and I can
work on that.
We're very lazy, the both of us, and we won't work on it. We won't work on it. I won't work on it. You won't work on it. It's always been the K&R listeners who did all the heavy lifting when it came to the music, when it came to the animations, when it came to designing that logo on your shirt. It's always been someone else who's did it. So as much as people like this segment, there has never been anything put together for it. But it is time for the return of the Say Something Nice About Ville Heinola segment. It's been a long time coming, a long road for him to get here. Take a look at his game tonight, Ken, and break it down for me.
Yeah, I loved a lot about Ville Heinola's game. 17 shifts for 12-14, sheltered minutes in his first NHL game since January of 2022, I want to say. Long time coming, almost 2 full years between games, 23 months anyway, or 22 and change. Liked a lot about what I saw. 2 shots on goal, 4 shot attempts, 1 hit, 2 giveaways. He was rocked once by Marcus Foligno, but honestly, Sean, I like that play because he took the hit to make the play, which is the whole point, right? And again, we know the way Marcus Foligno plays, and a lot of Jets fans don't like it, but he saw an opportunity. He finished his check, but Ville Heinola, that was one of those things where he actually probably liked getting hit because it meant to remind him what it feels like to be hit in an NHL game. I liked a lot of his patience. I liked the way that he moved the puck with his defense partner, Colin Miller. I liked how he defended early on. I think I sent you a text right away. There was a really nice box out on Marcus Johansson, which again, this is exactly, we know Ville Heinola can move the puck. We know he can get up ice. We know he can run a second power play unit. We know he can do a lot of great things when it comes to zone exits, zone entries, all of those things. When the puck is on his stick, Ville Heinola has been an NHLer for 4 or 5 years in a lot of ways in the offensive side. Can he defend? That is the biggest question. Today was an important step forward in making that claim on a third pairing job with the Winnipeg Jets, and then see what happens down the road, which is what Scott Arniel said this morning. See what happens down the road, ease him into the action. We're going to get to the other defenseman who also stepped up in a big way today in a minute, but loved almost everything about Heinola's game. hey, Scott O'Neill pointed it out in the post-game show, and it was not a knock on Ville Heinola. You knew this was going to happen in a game that was played often at hyper speed. We like to use the hyper speed term, Sean, because we saw hyper speed at its peak in 2022 when the Colorado Avalanche won the Stanley Cup. There were elements of this game that had hyper speed attached to it, but Ville didn't get left in the dust. Was there a player or two he probably would have made if he had been in the lineup for the majority of those 23 months? Yes, but that's not the case. This guy's played 2 AHL games this season after basically being out since day one of training camp when that infection in his ankle popped up. So I loved a lot about what I saw from Ville Heinola's game. I think it was an important baseline step. I think he gets better and better as this road trip moves along. The competition level will continue to be high. It will be high against the LA Kings. It will be high against the Vegas Golden Knights. It will be high against the Dallas Stars. But Ville Heinola firmly planted his flag in the ground today that he's here to take a spot. He's not here just to be on the roster.
Yeah. So you called it a baseline, Ken. Now, and I'm not disagreeing with this assessment. If that's his baseline, man, I'm happy. I do think that this is one of the best, and maybe it should make sense, right? He's 2 years older. There's development in there, even with all the things happening. But that was, for me, one of the best efforts I've ever seen from him at the NHL level. And what I loved about it was like the speed. There was one point where he carried it out of the zone, and you could just tell. So baseline is a guy goes in, I haven't played in 2 years. I've had all these injuries. I'm just going to go and I'm just going to survive this game. And that looks like the kind of game that you need to survive. I mean, the Jets as a team survived that game, right? But I didn't look at Ville Heinola and break down his shifts and think he's surviving. I looked at Ville Heinola and I saw a guy who looked fast, who looked sharp. The point that you make about the penalty that he draws from Foligno, inviting contact, confident that he's going to be able to handle that contact, even though the guy forechecking him is Foligno, who's one of the biggest, heaviest players in the league. Like the confidence level that comes with that, the confidence level to see him jump into the play the way that he did. I think that this was just a great first step from Ville Heinola. And you've like, I remember we did a game and he was up and he was playing with Boston and he made one kind of like, boneheaded play. It ended up in the back of the net. They end up losing it. I think it ended up being the game winning goal. And we were saying like, these are the kind of plays that Ville Heinola can't be having, right? I didn't see any of that risk element in his game, right? We know Ville Heinola has a very offensive side to him. What I saw tonight was a guy who did all the things that make everyone around him great, and he didn't even scratch the surface of what he's capable of doing offensively. You had said in a text to me that it's a quiet showing and quiet in a good way, right? A lot of times we say that. I remember when Samberg came into the league, and look what he's turned into, and we'll get to Samberg right after this. But when Samberg came into the league, we used to talk about him when we'd say like it's quiet, and that's good for him, and that was good for him. To me, it was quiet, but it wasn't that quiet. I noticed him out there tonight. I noticed the things he did. I thought he made the Winnipeg Jets better. I thought he handled a crazy pressure test. And that's a guy who's walking into, like you said, a super fast game, not just, a 20 games in fast NHL, but the two top teams in the NHL right now going at each other fast game and handle it absolutely splendidly. If I am the Jets coaching staff, I am beyond happy with what I see from Ville Heinola, as I would be happy, Ken, with the play of Fleury, who stepped up into the spot that that Dylan Samberg leaves behind. And what I take away from that, Ken, is, we talked about it last time on the show. Samberg has allowed Neil Pionk to be who he is. I thought Fleury tonight, A, was really solid, B, was very confident and very active, but C, played the kind of game that allowed Neil Pionk to continue to be Neil Pionk.
Yeah, right on. Hayden, Sean, we talked about this. For folks who were shaking their head and saying, let Ville cook, give him the job in the second pairing right away, today's effort by Hayden Fleury was exactly why we told you on Saturday that Hayden Fleury would be getting the job, at least temporarily. 26 shifts for 18-14. 104 while shorthanded, 5 shot blocks for Hayden Fleury. 1 questionable penalty. I didn't like that call whatsoever, but Sean, that was a we know what's happened in the past play, so the radar is up. So that was clearly a push on the back of the pants for Kaprizov, but because in the past there has been a falling down by Logan Stanley and there has been a clear cross check to the ribs of Kaprizov, the Wild put the league on notice already on the weekend. We heard this on 32 Thoughts. They weren't happy about the Kajula hit. So again, no big deal. I'm not here to rip on the people wearing stripes. I can understand why it was called in real time. But to me, that was Hayden Fleury playing Kaprizov the way that he has to in being bumped up to a top 4 role. I love the way that he played. I've told you this from the beginning, Sean. I love his mobility. I think that Hayden, from conversations I've had with him recently and one that I had with him on that last road trip, I love the way that he has found. He knows what he is now. He came out of junior as a high draft pick, an offensive guy. He realizes that in order for him to be an NHL player, he's not going to be running the power play. He needs to be an effective, mostly third pairing guy that can show that he can be bumped up in the lineup at times. When he simplifies his game, when he uses his feet to check, he's got a big body. He's not a super physical guy, but he's not a perimeter guy either. He's not afraid to clear the front of the net out. When he uses his feet and stick to defend, he can be a very effective player. That's why I wanted to see more of him at the start of the year when he was a healthy scratch frequently. This is the kind of player he can be. He's got 300 plus NHL games under his belt. I think that he's also he's in a competition, Sean. Logan Stanley back on the ice with the Jets today in a non-contact jersey. Hayden Fleury is fighting to keep his spot in the lineup also. And again, he put on a very important step in terms of planting his own flag, in terms of showing that he maybe deserves to be in that lineup, even when most people are healthy.
Hey, I got challenged here by Julian Mush, who says, pretty rich of Renny to talk about Fleury with so much praise when he was defending not putting him in the lineup. I don't know if you aren't picking up what I'm putting down here. I think I said very clearly that I thought that Fleury was the better of the 2 players, but Logan Stanley serves a purpose that the Winnipeg Jets were trying for a long time to add in there. Scott Arneal talked about it out loud. Logan Stanley goes into the lineup over Fleury, not because he's the better player. He goes in because the Winnipeg Jets wanted to have a guy who could bully other teams and another guy that they could fight, because they were worried that too much of it would fall on Adam Lowry. They didn't realize that they were going to add Kyle Connor and Mark Scheifele into the scrapping pool here. But I thought we pretty clearly explained that we were passing along why the Winnipeg Jets put him in the lineup. If you want us to just kind of rail against the coaches and say this is stupid, you probably came to the wrong podcast. You're not picking up what I'm putting down here, Julian. Where do you want to go? Let's go to Kupari. Before we go to Kupari, let's do this. Nicholas says, I'm not sure if it's getting too late, but I'm starting to think it's headband time. Nicholas, you are right. Time to make this a Sean's headband version of the Kenny and Renny show. Here we go. Man, I just feel like that hair is all over the place. Let's just roll with it. Let's just roll with it. There's nothing that can be done now. This is live TV.
Oh boy. Elliot said he likes to look like an unmade bed today on the pod, and you are currently his equal right now.
I think I look like one of those mattresses that's on fire in a back alley right now is probably what I'm looking like. Let's go. I feel like I'm defending myself left, right, and center here, and I know that there's a lot of people who think I've got hate on for Rasmus Kupari because I pointed out his lack of production when everyone else was saying he would be the biggest answer closer on the fourth line they'd ever had. But someone said here they want to go to Kupari. I think that's a great idea. I thought Kupari was one of the best players on the ice. And here we go. ESH says, how about Kupari? Heck of a game. I'd like to see him replace Appleton for some time. I'm not going to go there. I'm not. Hey, listen, you know my thoughts on breaking up the third line. But Kupari tonight was a disruptive force. It turns into a goal. But just beyond that, like there were some plays where he's starting to pick up some confidence and actually hold on to the puck a little bit, try and do a couple things with them. Stacy S says that Kupari was stellar. Stacy S is absolutely right. But I thought that Rasmus Kupari was, I'll say it again, Connor Hellebuyck was God mode here tonight. After that is Alex Iafallo. I thought the third best player for the Winnipeg Jets on this night was Rasmus Kupari.
Love the forecheck. And I mean, you talk about the disruption. I mean, this, not just the hit itself, Sean, but the ability to get control of the puck and find Iafallo. I mean, one thing we've seen from Rasmus Kupari, his feet are exceptional. He's incredibly fast, one of the fastest players on the Jets, but it doesn't always translate into offense, right? This is a great play. He finds the angle perfectly on the attack after the Colin Miller dump in, gets there first, finds a way to steal the puck, then finds Iafallo kind of, I love the way that Cheryl Pounder said it on the broadcast, Sean. Iafallo is lurking in the weeds in that situation. But not only does he have the, Kupari finds, gets the first hit, first quick, then finds the player kind of in a quiet zone area. Iafallo goes to the backhand, but I mean, it was just a great play overall. Kupari got a couple bumps. I mean, Nemestikov left the game momentarily in the first period, got a bump up to the second line. Mark Scheifele was in the box for the longest minor in NHL history because it was a coincidental minor and there was no whistle for the first 7-8 minutes of the second period. So a 2-minute minor became, I think, an 8:05 minor for Mark Scheifele. So that meant that Kupari got another bump. Lowry got a bump as well. But liked his game, 13 minutes, a little bit more involved physically, Sean. Obviously, the one hit on the forecheck turnover that was caused by him. But 3 hits in the game, had a takeaway in there. So I liked a lot about his game today. And when Rasmus Kupari plays with that level of speed and then gets involved physically, things can really happen for him. I know there's some people, including Mike L., saying Kupari would be better on the second line. I'm not ready to go that far yet, Sean. I know we're in agreement there. I do think there is more offensive upside available, but I don't think it's more offensive upside or creativity, at least, than Vlad Nemestikov. I mean, let's not kid ourselves here.
No.
Kupari hasn't had an assist since October of 23. So that's a long time. I mean, his speed creates and generates for his line mates, but to think that because he's a fast skater, he automatically would mesh with Nikolai Ehlers, I'm not sold on that just yet. But I mean, I do think that there's more potential to him down the road. But again, I don't see Rasmus Kupari. The Jets view themselves as a Stanley Cup contender. I don't see that as the solution. If they're going to try to get an upgrade in that spot, I don't see Kupari as being an upgrade. I see him as being an excellent fourth line player that can play up the lineup. But I don't think he's going to be playing up the lineup under its current, configuration. And I don't think he's an upgrade over Appleton. Appleton is he's just a very responsible defensive player who also skates well. Kupari, I do think he has more than fourth line upside, but much like Iafallo, when that player's on the fourth line and when Morgan Barron is on the fourth line, that's an excellent fourth line on a team that is trying to contend to win the big trophy at the end of the year.
I mean, so this is his third point of the season, right? And we're 22 games in. So Rasmus Kupari is on pace to get less than 12 points this season, right? And I get it. Like, he's one of those guys, right? He's one of those guys that for whatever reason, the audience wants to celebrate. And I no, it's not for whatever reason. I know how these things work. People love to confirm their biases. So there's a whole bunch of people out there who thought Rasmus Kupari was going to be something. They thought very specifically Rasmus Kupari was going to be something, and then he got 1 goal last season. And then he'd gone however long without a goal.
He didn't have a goal last year.
Sorry, he got 1 assist last season, yes. So Then he gets a couple goals this year. And so every time he gets a goal, the conversation turns to, here it comes. The offensive explosion is almost here and better move him up to the second line, because people like to be right. And so people want to say, see, I told you the whole time. It's like you with the third line last year, Ken. You knew.
Oh, hang on a second. Hang on a second.
You knew that at some point,
wait a second.
They were going to break up the third line,
buddy?
and you'd be like, there you go. I knew it was
Sean Reynolds.
You're wrong until you're right. It's one of those.
Hang on a second. What did you just say at the top of the show about Alex Iafallo? And who did I say could be put on that line with very limited let down?
The third line?
Iafallo is who I said you could put on that line and there would be no drop off because Nino could help. That's why I said it. I didn't say I wanted Nino off the line.
Listen, you said that. You said that. You should,
because I thought that Iafallo could do Nino. As good a job.
You should go into the Jets room and tell him you need to get off that line. And now, Nino, that's what you should tell him.
Hey,
it's coming. Is Nino, that what you're gonna? You gonna do it?
No, what I was gonna say is Nino might have. No, Nino's played plenty on the top six. Anyways, let's not get back to that.
I
don't want to bust it up.
I'm teasing.
I know you're teasing, and I'm just reminding everyone who said I was a lunatic that I thought that Iafallo, based on how he played in LA on the third line, could handle the third line role, and there would still be some offense. Would there be as much offense as when a perennial 8-time 20-goal scorer is on it? Absolutely not.
Yeah,
I was never doubting that.
Anyways, I'm teasing you, and
I like it. I like it,
folks. But I mean, it's teasing.
This sounds like a Cambrian moment here. Sounds like a Cambrian moment because Scott Arniels and Rick Bowness are smarter than I am.
Yes,
their decision paid off. No,
it paid off that they didn't listen to you, no doubt, Ken. And if you're looking for to pay off high interest credit cards or debt, we suggest you go talk to our friends at Cambrian Credit Union about their payoff loan. They can show you how taking out a loan to pay off your debt actually gets you debt free faster, and you can save thousands of dollars. Go to cambrian.mb.ca to book an appointment online, and I can promise you, no one at Cambrian would ever suggest breaking up the Winnipeg Jets third line. Anyways, I got my digs in on you on the third line. I got my digs in on the crowd on Rasmus Kupari. Time to get to the Johnson Group got you covered play of the game. What do you got?
Yeah, I think it has to be, I mean, Connor Hellebuyck had the Jets covered. There's no argument there. But to me, it has to be the Alex Iafallo sleeper play on, taking the two Wild out of the play. I mean, that has to be it for me. That's a kind of unheralded got you covered kind of moment by a guy who is not afraid to get involved, and he was coming to the aid of his goaltender, and he essentially made it an odd man rush because for whatever reason the two Wild players were not willing to let it go when there was really nothing to let go in the first place. So that play by Alex Iafallo for me is my got you covered moment.
It's clearly the got you covered moment. I will give a B, a
honorable mention,
and a 1B, or an honorable mention to whoever broke their stick in the first period. That stick sat in that spot, and it ended up being like so key. Like Kaprizov goes in on that, and he's getting pressured by the D-man, so he can't move this way, but he doesn't have room to kind of deke Connor Hellebuyck and try and get him moving one way or the other, because the stick's in the way, so it forces him into just a very, the guy right now who maybe is on pace for being the Hart Trophy winner had his options taken away there. And then later on in the play, it ended up, I think it broke up a play as Minnesota was in there pressuring. So whoever broke that stick, that's the backup we've got you covered. But no doubt about it, like, my goodness, taking two guys out of the play. And I guess if we're giving the we've got you covered play to Alex Iafallo, we have to kind of give an assist to Connor Hellebuyck for breaking the brains of the two players who did that in that situation. That is the Johnson Group we've got you covered play of the game. And hey, do you run a small business in Canada? Look to Canada's #1 employee benefits plan, Chambers Plan, to give you a competitive edge. Chambers Plan is the simple, stable, smart choice for over 30,000 businesses countrywide. Visit chamberplan.ca to learn more, and what you will learn is that they will have you covered just like they have us covered, the Kenny and Renny OGs. Moving on to the keg save of the game. What do you got, Ken? Like, this is work. This is overtime. Work cut out for you. Try and pick one. This is like eating one Lay's chip. Just pick one.
Yeah, I think that one of his best saves was one of his first saves in the first period when Ryan Hartman had the drop pass to Marcus Johansson. It was one of the many toe saves that Connor Hellebuyck joked about. Well, not really joked about, but mentioned after the game when Mike McIntyre was asking him about the litany of saves he made. Toe was hot, glove was hot. He was starting to rattle off a bunch of things, and then quickly got back to Connor Hellebuyck thanking his teammates for the job they did in front of him. But I'm going with the Johansson save, even though again you could have mentioned 20 of them, I think. But anyways, that one was impressive to me. More likely, it set the tone of what was to come. That was sort of what I was looking at here.
Yeah, it's one of those plays that when Hartman delivers it, he thinks it's a goal, right?
Oh,
And
totally. Yes.
to be honest, Ken, I don't know that I've ever seen a goalie save one of those before. Like those are really, really savvy moves like that, because you slash across the net and the goalie has to push off and follow you. And so in doing that, when the goalie moves and you throw it back against the grain and the defenseman didn't know it was going there, like that is a goal 99.9% of the time, and it gets stopped. It is brilliant that he got to that. I agree with you, Ken. For me, that is hands down in a game where there were a million choices. I still think that save doesn't happen very often, right? A lot of times when you see a goaltender makes these wow saves and these candidates for save of the year, this won't be one of those, Ken. This won't be like,
Right.
we won't see this at the end of the year in the top 100. But those plays where a goalie knows that the pass is going to go across and he pushes across and throws the glove out and gloves it and saves it, those look amazing and they look way nicer than that save. But the goalie knows the pass is going there, and they're hoping that the player hits their glove. And that's what happens in the vast majority of those situations, is they just get their glove in the right spot and it's a nice save. This is one of those saves that almost no goaltender makes. And this is just Connor Hellebuyck being like so strong within his positioning that he puts himself in a place to survive a play most goalies just cannot survive. This is a gorgeous save. It's understated. This is a goal, like I said, 99.9% of the time.
It's Hellebuyck's superpower. Again, he makes this look kind of mundane.
It does. You're right.
But it's really not. It's really exceptional.
He's costing himself spots on the save of the year because he's making them look boring. It makes it look like he's like, yeah, okay, whatever. Anyways, that's my hashtag the keg save of the game. It doesn't matter what I think. Doesn't matter what Ken thinks. You share with us your hashtag the keg save of the game. You're automatically entered to win a $50 gift certificate usable at any of the 3 fine keg locations here in the city of Winnipeg, each location finer than the last. And the winner from our last show, that would be Terry Trey. Terry Trey, you know what to do. Direct message me at SN Sean Reynolds. Send me your full name. Send me an email. I'll have the fine folks at the keg send you a $50 gift certificate usable at any of the 3 fine keg locations here in the city of Winnipeg, each location finer than the last. And Ken, that brings us to our TCB lamplighter. What do you got?
Yeah, I mean, under normal circumstances, I would say it has to be the Niederreiter goal, but with the caveat that you say it has to be, or we prefer that to be a repeatable goal. I don't think it's a repeatable situation where 2 players get caught hanging around with Alex Iafallo. So I'm going to go with the repeatable goal, the tenacious forecheck by Rasmus Kupari leading to Alex Iafallo's game-tying goal, which in a game where we look like the Jets could have been down 4 or 5-0, all of a sudden the game is tied because of a hustle play by the fourth line, who almost always is hustling every single shift. So for me, I'm going to go with the first of 2 Alex Iafallo goals.
Ken, you and I are really coming together. We're 3 for 3 on this night. I was going to say, and you basically broke it down exactly. You're not going to get that play happening again where 2 NHL players forget that they're in the NHL and they have responsibilities. So while it's amazing that Alex Iafallo does get them tied up and does that, that forecheck by Rasmus Kupari is phenomenal. What a great play. And then it's one of those things where he not only gets the puck, but he instantaneously moves the puck into a dangerous place. The amount of time that Alex Iafallo has to operate with that is minuscule. This is you talked about it being a fast game. This is the NHL at its fastest. You don't have a lot of time. You've got to pick a spot, and he goes and he gets it there. This goal, I love everything about this goal, Ken. Like working hard, taking the puck from someone, putting it in the right spot, that player being in the right place. Like this is one of those things where Rasmus Kupari doesn't see where he is, but Rasmus Kupari thinks to himself, well, if I were a guy trying to score a goal, this is where I'd be. So I'm going to put the puck there. And there he is. The guy's there, right? Maybe what you're seeing for all you out there hoping, desperately hoping that Rasmus Kupari is going to prove you right and he's going to turn into a point-producing guy. Maybe the fact that he had some anticipation in the situation, knows where the guy is, maybe that will do that. Anyways, I got to get moving on this. Doesn't matter what we think. Send us your hashtag TCB Lamplighter of the game. You're automatically entered to win a frosty, delicious 8-pack of Lamplighter Amber Ale, like Donnie Boy did in our last show. You know what to do, Donnie Boy. Direct message me at SN Sean Reynolds. Send me your full name. Send me an email. I will send you a frosty, delicious, a voucher for a frosty, delicious 8-pack of Lamplighter Amber Ale, brought to you by our friends at TransCanada Brewing Company. It is the nectar of the gods. And hey, if you can't wait for Kenny and Renny to gift you yours, you know what to do. Head on down to TransCanada Brewing Company. Join them in their tap room at 11290 Kenniston, where they've got all the beers, all of them, every last one of the beers that you would ever want, and some great pizza and some great people and a great atmosphere too. That's it for us, Ken. Time to get
just
going
one quick
here.
one. Quick one. The Hellebuyck no comment response to Mike McIntyre's question about Bill Guerin coming over and sort of putting on his Team USA hat in a congratulatory manner. Do you take anything from that at all, or no?
Well, I take it that Connor Hellebuyck is going to be the starting goaltender for that team, and they're like, why would they hide it from anyone? It's interesting. I had some conversations when I went down south in Nashville about Mark Scheifele and the chances of him being, and it sounds like Canada is keeping their really, really close to the vest. But I mean, like Connor Hellebuyck, and I mean, it's pretty interesting because Woll out of Toronto is leading the NHL in, maybe not after tonight, but he was leading the NHL in save percentage. And I did notice that Jake Ottinger is starting to creep up into the conversation, and a guy that I know that last year, from what I heard from the Dallas Stars, Jake Ottinger was not himself. He was just getting back from injuries. He kind of rounded for him at the end of the season. Jake Ottinger at the top of his game is going to push Connor Hellebuyck when he gets going. I'm very confident of that, but even then it's like, well, where could you possibly go if you're that team, if you're not going to Connor Hellebuyck? Like, there's places you can go, but like, talk about overthinking it if they went into a different situation. That's all I can say is this. I know I had some people saying, good luck to Canada playing the US with Connor Hellebuyck playing this way. I just think that there's a lot of lateral movement to be had. And if there's someone who knew a little bit about creating that lateral movement, it's Nate McKinnon, Cale Makar, guys like that who had success against Connor Hellebuyck last year. So yes, Connor Hellebuyck looks like he's well on his way to yet another Vezina season. Team Canada is going to have the kind of guys who could solve that. So anyway, that's my take.
Canada will also be contending with Kyle Connor, though, too. I mean, he's going to either be playing with Austin Matthews or Jack Eichel. That's going to be that'll be a handful for them as well.
Yeah.
But speaking of Four Nations, Josh Morrissey, 25 plus minutes today. Solid game here too. We know that his workload is going to be enhanced with Dylan Samberg on the shelf here for a considerable amount of time.
I had such a good Josh Morrissey story to tell in that Nashville game, and I couldn't tell it because the Jets just never got off the ground that night. You just can't go in that direction and talk about how good someone is and like throw all this backing information in when the night just doesn't call for it, or the player is really not showing out in that game. So anyway, I'm sure I'll get the opportunity to, and like I said, I'm very confident in my calls. Josh Morrissey is going to be on that that team. So is Mark Scheifele, and Connor Hellebuyck is going to be the starter for Team USA. Sometimes you got to go out on a limb here, folks. Anyways, shutting it down here. We will see everybody very late at
Safe
night.
travels, buddy.
I will be doing it from a hotel room in Columbus. Ken will be doing it from the safety of your own home. I think right where you're sitting right now, that will be good. Regardless, we would love to see all of you. But before we do go, we want to say for the whole bunch of you right now who we see in our chat room and all the people who will be listening later, if you appreciate the conversation happening in this space, we implore you to appreciate our sponsors who fight to keep the conversation going in this space. For us, that's Vittorio Rossi, Pristine Roofing, Cambrian Credit Union, Sweet Lou Furlan, Arctic Spas, the Johnston Group, the Keg, and of course, TransCanada Brewing Company. Thank you to them. Thank you, Ken. Another great job tonight. And thank you to all of you for showing up. I know you love showing up for the wins. Another big win for the Jets tonight. And maybe we'll be doing it all again after a win on Wednesday. Talk to you later, folks.